All right, well, we can go ahead and get started. It is 5:02. I would like to honor everyone's time. Thank you to everyone who is joining us, who has decided to join us this evening. You are greatly appreciated. We want to take this opportunity to first thank our board members who are on with us this evening. We have Dr. Beadle, board president. Dr. Beadle, would you like to say a few?
I want to say is hello and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us.
And then we have Ms. Dorinthia Robinson, board member, joining us this evening. And I'd like to start out by introducing, having each one of our cabinet members introduce themselves. So if we would start with Kara, you are first on my screen.
Oh my goodness, the honor. Hi, everyone. I'm Kara Turner. I'm Director of Information and Technology, which oversees the library and then the instructional technology and the network here in the district of Brown Deer. I apologize. There's elementary school kiddos right here, so I'm going to go on mute.
Thank you. And Jody, you're up next.
Good evening, Jody Smyska, the Director of Facilities and Grounds.
Thank you, Jody. Kevin.
I'm Kevin Klemick. I'm the Director of Business Services.
Dr. Garrison.
Hello, I'm Dr. Garrison. I am the Director of Teaching and Learning.
Mr. McGregory. Maybe not. So let's go to, did I miss anybody from cabinet? I think I received everyone. If Mr. McGregory jumps back on, then we'll get him. You're muted, Mr. McGregory.
Hey, everybody. I'm Mr. McGregory, the K-12 Athletic Director. I'm about to walk into my office. Just got back.
Okay, thank you. And let's have our principals and APs, if you all would introduce yourselves. Let's start with the high school.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shavala Brown, proud principal at Brown Deer High School.
Hi, I'm Erica Probst. I'm the assistant principal at the high school.
And middle school.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tryla Pitchford, and I am the middle school principal.
Hi, and I'm Jay Henderson, the assistant principal at Brown Deer Middle School.
And I do not see Mr. Griffin yet. And so when they pop on, I will turn it over to him and have him introduce himself. So thank you all for joining us this evening. What I thought I would do is start out by sharing information that I shared, providing an update to the board back in January regarding where we are with COVID. So this is, if you would just bear with me for a moment, I will provide that update again. And if you heard it at the January meeting, my apology in advance, but I suspect that there are some individuals who did not have a chance to get on in January. So I will provide that update to you. And from there, the next part of this process will be I will turn it over to Dr. Garrison, who will facilitate the discussion around the questions that came to us in advance. And then if the opportunity presents itself, then certainly we will open it up to allow others to ask any questions that perhaps were not sent to us in advance. So that is how this process will, we will proceed with this process this evening. And we'll go from there. Not to mention that I have the K4 orientation parents at 6 o'clock. So if I jump off at about 5:55, I am going into a 6 o'clock meeting with our K4 parents who are looking to join us in the 22-23 school year. So first, let me thank our administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, and students, all of whom are making a concerted effort to continue to navigate these very trying times. The mental health and socio-emotional state of our students is being impacted in addition to focusing on the academics, as we all well know. Students benefit from in-person learning and safely returning to in-person instruction continues to be a priority here in the school district of Brown Deer. Before I begin with our COVID update, allow me to take you back to the 2021 school year, where we implemented a 5-phase approach to bringing our students back to school. We started out virtual for 3 weeks to give our staff members a chance to become more adept at teaching virtually. As we transitioned through the phases from one quarter to the next, our ultimate goal was, and has always been, to transition all of our students back to in-person learning. In the last quarter, rather than returning to 5 days a week, we stayed with the Monday, Tuesday, virtual Wednesday, Thursday, Friday option. With that, as we were planning for the 21-22 school year we're currently in, believing that COVID would be on the decline, we planned for all of our students to be back in school on September 1st, 2021. We continue to work toward, if you wouldn't mind muting your mic, please. Thank you. We continue to work toward and have every intention on keeping our buildings open for in-person learning. As we all know, in-person learning, once again, is the best mode of learning for students. A virtual option is through a partnership with the Kiel School District for families who were and continue to be immune compromised. In no way are we negating the COVID cases and all that is happening outside of us. We have learned over time that we can only do our very best to respond to those areas that are within our locus of control, and that is in our school building. Fast forward to 21-22 school year. We were sailing along with in-person learning in all 3 buildings while continuing to navigate the challenge of not being fully staffed for a variety of reasons, quarantines, illnesses due to COVID, and what we call just regular sick. FMLAs, staff resignations, and again, staffing. And all of this can look very different on any given day. The elementary school went virtual for 2 weeks due to staffing. And a couple weeks ago, the middle school went virtual for 2 weeks, also due to staffing. Please note that although we have returned to in-person learning, students, teachers, staff, and administration continues to be responsive to navigating COVID. We have all had to pivot to meet the needs of our school families, and yes, to say the least, it has been quite the journey. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about our threshold. Our threshold is a 10%, when 10% of our staff are not available for our students, that the 10% threshold is what we take into account for consideration to return to virtual. It does not mean we will return to virtual, but that is what we take into account. As long as principals are able to figure out how to make daily operations work in our buildings with staffing, we will continue to proceed with in-person learning. We, however, did not set a threshold for students. A threshold was set the year before with the observance of a 14-day decline in the trajectory of the virus, if you all recall that with our first plan. And what we finally realized with that 14-day trajectory is that it never happened. So there was, it fluctuated a little bit. And so setting a threshold for a return to virtual would continue to be a challenge. Determining a number for when we would return to in-person would be near impossible, as we are unsure of what will be happening with the virus. And so that was the discussion that we had as it relates to going virtual or not. We also held a vaccination clinic in December where we had 185 people who came to receive a vaccination. We held another one on Saturday, January 15th from 10 to 2. And we encourage all of our families to take advantage of this opportunity in our district moving forward, as what we have now done is continue to partner with with Health Connections, who is led by Erica Sinclair. We will now hold vaccination and testing clinics on the second Saturday of every month at the elementary school from 10 to 2. So just want everyone to be aware of those dates, and I will make sure Ms. Krieger put something out on the web, on social media to make sure everyone is aware of those dates. So we continue to proceed, again, with keeping our students in school and understanding there are challenges that will continue to come our way. But again, we will navigate them as they come, pivot as necessary, and do everything we possibly can to keep everyone safe and healthy in our schools. So that was my update from the board meeting in January, on January 11th. And what I'd like to do at this time is turn it over to Dr. Garrison, who will facilitate the discussion regarding the questions that were sent to us in advance. So Dr. Garrison, if you would take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Brown, and welcome to everybody here in the community. As it pertains to the questions that were pre-sent to us from the community, there's no specific order that I'll ask the questions that came to us, but I will read them into the record, and so then we'll be able to answer them accordingly. And so the question is, we know we are in an unprecedented time.
Papa wanted me to let you know the hearing. The hearing's gonna be February the 18th, 10 o'clock.
Please mute if you can.
Okay.
And so I'll start over with the questions.
Oh, sorry, you guys. My apology if you heard that. I'm sorry.
I'll start over with the questions again. So we know we are in unprecedented times, but we as parents feel no support with the current COVID protocols for virtual learning. Both of our children had to be quarantined for 1 week, and we were left to try to teach our children while also balancing work. And then it goes on to ask, does this plan on being addressed? And is the district looking into an OWL camera system for classroom for quarantine virtual students? As we know, the pandemic is not going away, of course, anytime soon. And so I'll start off with answering that question as it pertains to quarantine students and the work that they could be doing. But this was from an elementary parent. And we had some conversations today, not just today, but all along over this past month or so about the quarantine conversations and what we could actually do better. We know that last year we were pretty much virtual 5.0, where we had both in-person learning, virtual learning, a concurrent teacher at the same time. And I like to call it distance learning happening with a teacher on the camera with your students while they're in class. This year we made it a point not to ask our teachers to do that type of learning. We did point towards our Google Classrooms to be that method of learning for our students. We know that in the elementary schools, that is a hard thing to do as pertains to teaching your students wherever they are in the curriculum. With that being said, Mr. Griffin and I have had conversations about the possibility of owling certain classrooms. And both myself and Mrs. Turner has had conversations about how can we possibly owl certain classrooms as a possibility for some of our students who are being quarantined. Naturally, not all of our classrooms have that capability to be owled in and or to be Skyped in from that perspective. On the other hand, we have started to think about the opportunities that we have currently with some of our platforms for education. One of them being our Dreambox opportunity. Dreambox is a math adaptive conversation that gives us real time where your students are as it pertains to math. And so moving forward, one of the possibilities that we are exploring is the connection between Dreambox and what your kid could be doing for math. We could also be using RAS Kids for the elementary conversation as for the reading parts of the learning. Now, naturally, we know that there's other classes that your kiddo will be missing out on, but our goal is to make sure that we are definitely keeping up with our math and our reading opportunities, and the Dreambox and the RAS Kids opportunity will provide that while your students is being quarantined. And the good thing about Dreambox, again, it's adaptive. So it takes your kid from where they are currently and it moves them forward based off of the lessons. That data could be shared real time with our teachers. And so our teachers will know where your student is based off of the participation on the Dreambox platform. Now, Dreambox could be used at any given time. It doesn't have to be just for quarantine, but it does allow us to point you into a direction for learning for your child during that time. That's just a snapshot of the response that I'd like to give for that. And I would open it up to anyone who may have any additional questions or responses, sorry.
We do have, Dr. Garris, I will say, this is Kara speaking. I do have some Huddly cameras. So owl cameras are ones that kind of give the 360 view of the whole room and kind of the engagement, noise reduction. They're extremely expensive, not going to lie. We are looking at, we've talked to to some of our vendors, and there's something called a Huddly camera out there, Huddly camera out there, which is very, a little bit more cost effective and potentially portable, and then can be repurposed, you know, should this pandemic ever end. But there's some opportunities there that we are looking at to be able to stream at the very least what is taking place on the board, to cast to children at home if they are quarantined. And I think the challenge for teachers at the moment is to do that duality piece. And so those cameras, as we're looking for to be ready out of the box, point and shoot at the board, so that families at home potentially could participate. So.
And thank you, Mrs. Turner. Our next question is centered around COVID and the pandemic within itself. And so this is from a middle school parent. How is COVID affecting our students' education? And then, of course, the second part of that question was, what will be the short and long effect? And I will start with the response for that one as well. You know, I think COVID has affected all of our students in different ways. To pinpoint the exact way that it has affected each and every one of our students will be quite the challenge. But we know that it has affected our students in different ways. One of the ways that we are currently seeing is through an SEL conversation. Our students do have had some conversations, and it is affecting them from social emotional learning opportunities or social emotional lifestyle that they've had to adapt to with COVID. Some of our students haven't been in school. Then some of our students returned to school this year. And then, of course, when they returned to school this year, they had to experience the quarantine opportunities. So the in and out has not provided a level of consistency for them as we would like it to in a normal school year. So yes, we have experienced some of the social emotional concerns, and we have SEL teams here that's working closely with our students. However, we also know that there's still a challenge there. Naturally, there's academics that we can put into this conversation. Some of our students are behind in that thought process. But what I mean by behind is that we have the opportunity to see what we can do better to catch them up. Prior to the pandemic, we know we had some challenges with catching students up to be at grade level. I believe the full transparency, I believe the COVID-19 has exacerbated that thought as well for some of our students. Some of our students have thrived in the COVID world. What I mean by that is some of our students have done well navigating both sides of the platforms. And so that still is a challenge though, because it's like, which one am I going to be in today? Am I going to be in the virtual platform, or am I going to be an in-person platform? And having to navigate both at times can be very challenging. And so to pinpoint how COVID is affecting any of our students would be very hard. I think it's on an individual basis, but we do know it is affecting our students. And I'll open it up to Keanu to respond.
And I'll just add to that as well, Dr. Garrison, in terms of the impact. We've had numerous conversations as a cabinet and with our staff in terms of where our students were when COVID first hit. And then as we made the transition to begin to return to in-person learning, just reminding ourselves to really grant some grace to our students, understanding they're navigating this experience as well. But just to give you an example, reminding ourselves that our second graders, this year's second graders, never saw kindergarten on a consistent basis. So just think about the time that students were not in school. Now I'm a second grader trying to understand what it means to be in school is now what we're navigating in terms of trying to create a level of consistency for our students from the standpoint of socio-emotional learning as well as their academics. Likewise, at the high school, our students who are juniors, last time they saw school on a consistent basis, they were ninth graders. And likewise, our current freshmen, last time they saw school on a consistent basis, they had a middle school mindset because they were seventh graders. And so those are all the pieces we continue to try to navigate as we work toward exploring what recovering this instructional loss, if you will, with our students. So while they have been in school inconsistently for a while, for quite a period of time, we are looking at establishing this a level of consistency, one, by doing our very best to keep them in school, but also exploring all other options to be able to meet the needs of our students, knowing what they have experienced, again, from an SEL standpoint, as well as academics. So just keeping everyone abreast of what we have to be mindful of as we continue to navigate academics and the continuation of providing a high quality teaching and learning experience for our students. And if there are any questions we can answer, please feel free to ask. Any additional questions?
All right, thank you, Dr. Brown. Another question here is from a middle school parent. At what point will parents be allowed back into the schools? And how will we go about arranging possibilities of observing our students in the classrooms? And so I will start off with responding to that question as well. We know that our parents want to be back into the buildings and seeing what's happening. That's just an important part of learning. And I think our community has done a good job at being patient with us as we try to navigate our visitors to our buildings and still all the while still try to contact trace. And so as it stands right now, we haven't opened up the doors for our parents to necessarily come back full-fledged. I do believe that this is a opportunity for us to start looking at how we can slowly start and open up our doors for parents to start coming back and at least being back in our buildings. Necessarily, yes, yes, you would have to still follow certain mask protocols that we have here in our district. Yes, you will still have to, of course, follow all of our school rules that we have in place. Go check in, of course, through our Raptor system. Regardless, we will still have those things in place, but it will still have to be set up through the building principal. And so I don't think we are at a place right now where we're saying that we are able to start that process, but we are exploring the when. I'm sorry, and we are exploring the when this could happen. Sorry, we have shifted back to the 5-day protocols and here in the district from a quarantine's perspective. And so as things have kind of, hate to say, kind of gotten better in the Omicron variant, we are now trying to figure out the best ways to re-invite our partners, which is our parents, of course, back into our spaces on a regular basis. And so as it stands, we are not in that space yet. When that time does come, we will definitely put out information to our families and we will move about accordingly.
Dr. Garrison, there is a question in the chat regarding what is attributing or what is the contributing factor to the pandemic, student behavior or something else? Thank you for the question, Liz. I would, based on what we've have experienced this year, I would suggest to you it is a combination. There are a myriad of factors that are contributing to teacher resignations. I've been kind of keeping myself abreast of articles that have come out regarding why teachers are resigning. One concern is just around teachers having worked virtually have found it within themselves to want to explore the possibility of doing something different outside of K-12 education. So that's one factor. We have a staff member who resigned just a couple weeks ago, who left the K-12 profession like she just totally left the profession and went to the medical field actually. What companies are finding is opportunities for professional development that has to occur in their organizations. There's no better people to do it than teachers who have been standing in front of students and parents delivering instruction for years. And so there's a level of automaticity there, if you will, in terms of being able to deliver presentations. And so other companies are leaning in on teachers for that. Other reasons are we have staff who have decided to leave the profession to stay home with their own children for various reasons. We have staff members who have their own, who are out on FMLA and have their own illnesses that they are challenged with as well. So I would suggest to you, Liz, that it runs the gamut in terms of why individuals are resigning from the profession. Not to mention that COVID just adds 2, 3, 4 additional layers to what we're trying to navigate daily. And so full transparency with that, it can be exhausting in terms of what educators are now being asked to do as it relates to also navigating COVID. So I hope I answered your question for you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Brown. The next question I have here is actually centered around math and science at the middle high school. Are high school students negatively affected when math and science aren't taught for pretty much the entire school year? How does that affect their learning? And so I will actually turn that question over to Mrs. Brown. We have been having conversations about our high school classes and schedules, and we do believe that we may have a better fit for our students when answering this question. So Mrs. Brown, would you mind chiming in on that question, please?
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Garrison. So if I think I understand the question correctly, is the parent asking because of COVID, or is it just because of our schedule? When students miss out on just the schedule?
Yeah,
okay.
From a perspective, because we know we don't have classes, that some of our classes aren't for the entire year, they're semester courses. And so with the gaps in between, what are some of our thoughts?
Right, so prior to COVID, Brown Deer High School had an AB schedule, and to support the transition of providing education during COVID, they went to a traditional block. So instead of having 8 courses, the students would only have to manage 4. And so where a complete course used to be covered an entire academic school year, it was shortened. Well, the course wasn't shortened, but the time frame was shortened to end the course in a complete semester. This means, though, that a student technically could take algebra the fall semester of their freshman year, and possibly not take math again until second semester of their sophomore year. And so anytime any skills are not used for a long period of time, it can definitely impact your retention of skills. And there probably is some learning loss. To combat that problem, we are proposing for the upcoming school year to go back to our original AB schedule, which would allow students to complete a course once again for full academic year, and then there wouldn't be any gaps of courses. So you wouldn't have a year between taking a math course, a foreign language, a science course. All courses would run in a traditional format where they're a year long and then no gaps. So we understand the difficulty that because of COVID, and we had to make a difficult decision to try to make it manageable, not only for students, but families, because families were instrumental in supporting their kids during this time. And we knew probably 8 courses would be way too much to handle in a virtual situation. But now that we're back face to face and we have a better handle on virtual, in person, what happens when kids need to go virtual for periods of time. And we feel as though moving back to our traditional AB block schedule would be the best thing for our students.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. And one of our final questions here was actually centered around the KN95 mask thoughts. And the question is really centered around, has the district thought about purchasing KN95 masks for students in Brown Deer? Since we know that those are the most effective masks to have. And so I would love to answer that question and start off with answering that question. We know that KN95 masks are, again, the safest mask to have and to wear during this COVID pandemic. Naturally, initially when this first rolled out, it was a shortage on KN95 mask, and then of course from the shortage it became more of a supply chain issue. And now I think we're now getting to the point in America, at least, where we are able to still try to access more KN95 masks. The government has set out some opportunities for us for families and households to get free KN95 masks through an online registration system. We know that again, those are the safest masks, but we have not went to purchase 1,700 masks or more for our students here in the Brown Deer School District. And so what we have done is we have still provided some form of facial coverings for our students if they need them. And so that's kind of where we are currently, but I will open that up to any of the cabinet member or staff members who would like to answer anything additional with that.
I'll be happy to add a little something, Dr. Garrison. Just so that everyone is aware, obviously we are trying to use, some of our ESSER funding to support the PPE required, both for our nursing staff, for our staff members, and for the students. However, this year we are going through a ton of masks. We are getting close to approaching 50,000 masks that we have purchased so far this year. And so obviously the price difference between what we've been doing as the kind of the standard disposable mask, which is what we've been providing to students, that's a significantly less expensive than the KN95 masks, even when they're available. So we have been trying to balance the safety issue with just the amount of funds required to, if we were to supply every student with a K95 mask every day, we would certainly not be able to support a lot of the other initiatives we're trying to do through our ESSER funding. So it is that balancing act. So we do have a limited supply available on campus, but it isn't something that I think, unless the price were to come down considerably, we could probably afford to hand out to every student every day. So it's been kind of an interesting kind of seeing how that's happened, just because I think last year we had more students coming with their own masks. And this year we've been distributing them on a much more regular basis, where students just aren't coming with any mask at all. And so that's where, we're trying to fill the gap and at least provide some level of protection while they're in the building.
Thank you, Mr. Clement.
I was going to say, Kevin, while we are on the ESSER dollar purchase discussion, if you would just provide an update regarding what we've used our ESSER dollars for thus far.
Absolutely. We have done a number of things this year, and we're working on planning our budget for upcoming years. But so far this year, our major purchases or expenses related to ESSER funding has been expanding our nursing services. We have full-time and part-time nursing aides in both buildings now all the time. We've expanded our socio-emotional learning support for our students. We now have 3 members of that team, that's 1 for each school. We've restarted our after-school programming, which has included transportation, which is something we have never done previously, and using the dollars for that to provide our students with an opportunity to mitigate some of that learning loss. Some of the things you've heard before, technology, we did purchase another round of Chromebooks and some other software that some of the things you've heard tonight. We are supporting building substitutes and just substitutes in general, as we've talked about with teacher shortages, trying to fill staff positions, and just our own staff being out through COVID, being able to support having qualified staff in our buildings. We're also supporting our parent liaison position, which is helping connect our community members to the school. We do have a limited virtual option through the Kiel School District, and that there is an expense related to that, and we are paying for some of our paying that through some of our ESSER funding. And then, just as I mentioned, the PPE. So all of the masks that I just mentioned, other PPE supplies for our nursing staff and staff members, as well as some of the other mitigation things, our signage and things like that we've had to do to continue promoting social distancing as best we can, and the other parts of just trying to control the spread of COVID.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Garrison, that's the last question on that we received in advance, correct?
That is correct.
All right, does anyone else those of you who have joined us this evening and however did not get a chance to submit your question in advance, if you would like to drop a question in the chat, we will be more than happy to answer your question, or you can feel free to unmute your mic and we will answer questions that way as well. Or any questions about anything we've talked about so far?
It's Liz again. Hi.
Hi.
And I might have missed this. Is there, are we revisiting the mask mandate at any point in the near future? Or is that not on the table? Just out of curiosity.
Yes. So as we continue to have discussions with the North Shore Health Department in understanding the virus is on a decline, coupled with the fact that the data that they send us, that we receive from North Shore stating that we're still in a critical category in all of our age group categories. That's what we're trying to navigate right now, Liz. And so I'm hoping that there is a point at which we can move in that direction. So the goal is no one likes wearing these, full transparency. We all just want to not have to wear a mask if we can. But it is an option that's on the table. We want to make sure that, the question becomes, when is a good time or right time to be able to do that as we continue to progress through the school year.
Okay, yeah, I'm in favor of the mask mandate. I just was curious if it's coming up for debate anytime soon and just what people's reaction would be to that.
Sure, we talk about it all the time, and we know that there are instances where, for example, there are times where the mask is a barrier depending on what the kids are trying to do, right? So for example, theater, right? We have a theater production coming up. And so we have some parameters in place around where the kids who are actually on stage in the performance will not have to wear the mask while they're performing. But once they're off stage, of course, we put it back on, right? So just trying to explore and examine all the nuances of what that could look like, hoping that we get to a point where we could, hopefully not have to wear the mask. So it's always up for, I think in the midst of a pandemic, what we do here with our COVID task force, and we talk about all the pieces on the table that can be up for discussion as we make decisions about what's in the best interest of everyone to move forward in protecting our staff and our students. I will say though, Liz, I believe we're one of the fewer, as you well know, we're one of the fewer districts who have had the mask mandate since the beginning. And to be very honest with you, I believe that is what has worked in our favor in terms of a reduction in transmission. And we have yet to see actual transmission kid to kid in our we don't have any evidence to support that it's actually happened, transmission in our buildings. But we do know that we've had children we've had to send home who come to school either with symptoms or COVID positive after taking a test after we have sent them home. So it's a weekly conversation, Liz.
No, I get it. It seems like in other districts, where they're debating it seems like such a nightmare and people's behavior over it and stuff. So
And the consistency around it for us here in the school district of Brown Deer, I believe, has just alleviated that for us. And trying to go back and forth, 1 week we're optional, the next week we're all wearing them again. I think that would have presented more challenges for us had we had to navigate that terrain. So I'm appreciative that we've all, tried to be able to stay the course with that. Thank you, Sasha. All right, anyone else have any other questions? If not, we thought this is a time where we wanted to be able to connect with our parents and our community to apprise everyone of where we are. We are in the process of also planning for the 22-23 school year. So while we're bringing a school year to a close, we are also planning for the upcoming school year. And so we appreciate everyone's patience with helping us navigate this process. It sounds like we're going to be in it for a while, but we are open, not that that's what we want, so let's be real clear, but we are open to any ideas or suggestions that can help us continue to grow in this amazing space that we all continue to navigate every day. This is an amazing school district. We have great kids and we have great teachers and great administrators in our buildings who come to work every day to do what's best for children. And that's what we're all about. And that's where we will continue to put our best foot forward and continue to do our best work. So we all have each other's email addresses. That's easy, right? So if you need to reach out to anyone in particular, because you have any additional questions beyond this, again, please feel free to avail yourself to that. Let us know. And if Dr. Vito or any cabinet members have anything they'd like to add before we close out, please feel free to do so. Dr. Vito?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know what, thank you for taking the time and doing this. Monica, you and your team have been doing a wonderful job in relationship to working with our students, working with our parents, working with our staff, working with our board, and being able to do that. We know these are very challenging times not only for our district, but for every district across the state of Wisconsin and the United States. Being able to let our parents be able to ask certain questions during this time is a wonderful thing, and definitely support that. Thank you so much again and stuff for putting everything together and being able to get the questions answered to our parents. And again, like I said before, as one board member, I'd like to just say, I am so proud to be able to serve one of the best school districts in the United States. So thank you.
All right. Well, it is 5:44. Everyone, again, thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your evening. And please be safe and stay healthy. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you.